she's going to speak at that, and then there's a
Okay, answer the question. Sarah will be speaking at the pre-sentencing investigation, or pre-sentencing investigation. Sarah will be speaking at her sentencing.
it was a dysfunctional, toxic relationship in which both of them probably abused each other.
Sarah's devastated. She's disappointed. Sarah Boone is going to want to appeal. I believe that she does have potentially 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So Sarah was berating him a little bit and talking down to him.
I put my hoodie on, but Mr. James Owens, I know you guys have missed Mr. James Owens. He is been doing some little mini interviews, so I wanted to watch it with you guys. I haven't seen the interviews yet. The only interviews I've seen so far was the one that he did with, I think it was like Fox 35 Orlando outside the courthouse. They got to speak with him very briefly, but I saw that he did 2 other interviews, one on Court TV and then one on News Nation. So I definitely want to check him out with you guys. I just wanted to kind of listen to Mr. James Owens. Again, he's going to talk about the plea deal that Sarah Boone should have taken when they offered her to her before the trial started. And, you know, from what we heard in the grapevine, it was an offer of 15 years. So Sarah Boone, serve your 15 years. You already have 4.5 years. You know, that you've already done. So maybe at most, you know, maybe you do like 9-10 years. And then honestly, I don't know if Sarah Boone would have qualified for good behavior, because based on a lot of the inmate notes, it seems like Sarah Boone kind of liked to push the boundaries a little bit, you know, got on some of the guards' nerves and maybe like sneaking staples and stuff like that. I don't know if she would have gotten out on good behavior, but I don't know what their definition of good behavior is. Is like good behavior like you haven't stabbed anyone, you haven't committed more crimes, or is good behavior like, you know, you followed everything to the T and you're like a super perfect inmate, A+ student inmate? Lost without this trial. It was over so quickly. I'm lost. Yeah, this trial, it was like 1 week. But you know what? The good thing about a short trial, you can catch up way easier. If it's like a 4-week trial, then you had to catch up. Oh man, it would have been a lot tougher. But because the trial was super short, you can catch up. You can do it. We believe in you. We did like 8-hour streams reacting to the trial, but then I also posted videos on my YouTube where I try to condense the trial a little bit and explain certain parts of it, but I kept a lot of the evidence videos. So the reason why the shorter version of my videos are like still 4 hours long is because sometimes the body cam footage are like 2 hours long, or the interrogation. So I kept those in there, but you're welcome to jump around. I included timestamps in my videos, and yeah, definitely check it out, because the trial was, it went by so quickly. It was super, super quick. All right, Mr. Owens, let's see what he's gonna say.
Owens, it's great to have you back on the show.
Oops.
Well, thanks so much for being with me. What was your client's reaction when she heard the verdict, guilty, read in court?
Shocked. She was just in shock. Like, she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was this past Friday evening, and I would say shock. We were not she nor I were anticipating guilty as charged.
Wait, she was anticipating or wasn't anticipating?
We were not she nor I were anticipating guilty as charged.
Can you guys hear the audio okay, by the way? I think it should be okay. You know, but it's weird though, because I thought if the jury comes with a verdict a lot sooner, I thought defense attorneys are usually kind of worried. It's like, oh shit, they decided really quickly and it must mean maybe like guilty verdict. For me, if I was Mr. Owens, I'd be like, oh man, they only deliberated for an hour plus. Sarah, that doesn't sound good. Sarah, you better prepare yourself, okay? That doesn't sound good. That's not a good thing. One thing I've noticed about Owens is that he won't look at the interview or camera when he speaks. He basically has his stuff to say until sentencing, but he doesn't believe it. Owens won't look at the interview or the camera when he speaks. He basically has to say this stuff until sentencing, but he doesn't believe it. I think sometimes when people speak, sometimes when they're like in thought and they're trying to craft what they're saying, they kind of just like stare off into the distance, or they're not looking at the interviewer, or maybe they're like looking down or something. I feel like that's something that people do when they speak. So are you saying that like because he does that, it looks like he doesn't believe what he's saying? Audio's good? You guys can hear it? Okay. All right. Audio's good. Y'all can hear it.
She nor I were anticipating guilty as charged. You know, we considered that the jury might convict her of a lesser charge, or
that's what it is. Okay. the lesser charge. So maybe the manslaughter, or maybe the, what was it again? The negligent something, or the something negligent.
The first lesser was manslaughter, and the second lesser was culpable negligence.
Culpable negligence. Okay.
So yeah, she was in shock that they found her guilty as charged, which was the second-degree murder.
I'm sorry, but did she not read the jury instructions? Did she not read the jury instructions?
I'm struggling to figure that one out, because I had made a bet that the jury would come back under 2 hours, and they did. I found her wholly dislikable all through the entire process, from the moment she was arrested to the moment she was convicted.
Damn.
I can't imagine I'm alone. Everyone I've spoken to who's been following the case, albeit not in the courtroom, has said the same thing. They'll throw the book at her. Why did your client and why did you feel that wasn't going to happen?
The hard questions. I will say this, though. When she testified on the stand, I think she did a lot better, because I expected the Sarah Boone letters, okay? I expected the crazy Sarah Boone in the interviews, interrogation, the body cams. I expected crazy Sarah Boone to come out. But, you know, it's been 4.5 years. She's had time to mellow it out. She's had time to try to craft her identity in front of the jurors when she's testifying about this, right? Which is someone who's just like, okay, well, I'm not going to be an asshole. Got to make sure I'm not going to be like that, you know, be a little bit snappy. I got to make sure that I'm like, you know, patient and I'm soft-spoken. And I'm like, you know, I think she did a lot better, because a lot of people expected the full-blown Sarah Boone asshole, or the full-blown asshole Sarah Boone to come out. So I think she did a lot better on the stand. Yeah, I think she did a lot better on the stand. But I think, here's what I think. Cross-examination was short, in my opinion. Had she been up there cross-examined for, let's say, like 2 to 3 hours, I think you would start seeing the real Sarah Boone. Because, you know, if you're only up there for, let's say, like 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, it's like, okay, you had a short amount of time to kind of like keep yourself cool, calm, collected. But at some point, if you're up there long enough and someone keeps pushing your buttons, you know, your true self usually comes out. So I think if she was cross-examined longer, Mr. J probably would be able to bring that out of her. But, you know, Mr. J, you know, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
Well, she actually did pretty good on the stand if you watch her testimony.
Better than what we expected is different than doing pretty good on the stand.
As far as Sarah goes, she actually did pretty good, I felt like. But, you know, ultimately, as you mentioned earlier, the decision as to whether or not to accept a plea offer or to take the case to trial is ultimately only the client's decision. You know, we can tell, lawyer can tell her the pros and cons and the strengths and weaknesses of her position versus the state's position.
Sure. Did you recommend to her to take the deal, and she went against your recommendation? Because knowing how she's been with the last, you know, 8 trial attorneys who, you know, she spent before you, I would imagine that would be a scenario I'd believe.
Well, we talked about it in depth, and I try not to give my opinion initially. I want them to try to make the decision on their own, and then if they ask me for my opinion, then I give it to them based on
Did she?
Yes. You know,
What'd you say?
Well, that was something that I suggested she strongly consider, was that plea. I think with 15 years, you know, you do 80% of that sentence here in Florida, plus she'd done already 4.5 years. So she would have had, I think, about 8 years to do. So
Yeah. And then 8 years, because right now her son is 14 years old. He would have been like 20 by then. Still a lot of time to be with your son, be there for him during his, you know, if he goes to college or mid-20s, you know, if he starts a family and stuff like that. Still a lot of time to be with your son. I know that she would have been out when she was like in her mid-50s or something. Maybe that to her that sounds really old, but still a lot of time to spend with your son, you know, assuming that she doesn't die early of like, you know, bad health or anything like that. But I still think that's still really, really fucking decent. But you know what? She thought she was going to get out right now. She was like, you know what? I'm going to be there for my son, you know, for his 15th birthday or something. I think he just turned 14 recently. I think they said, right? So I don't know. Maybe she thought she was going to spend Christmas with him this year. And she was like, oh, you know, I'm going to be out soon. So why would I spend another 8 years? Should look like being nicer was, torture for her. Hi, Squeezy Bean Art. Crazy defendant would have come out if Owens hadn't been up there leading. Oh, yes. Owens was leading her so much, but that was during direct examination. Yeah, Owens was leading her so much, and I was so surprised that Mr. J. I was like, hello, can we object to this? What is going on here? Who's testifying? Is it Owens testifying or is it Sarah Boone testifying? Because it seems like Sarah Boone had a hard time memorizing timelines or whatever, and that's why Owens was in there testifying for her. So I'm like,
So yeah, that
So
was
she
a
went
real
against your
incentive.
advice. I mean, I sit here with a smile only because it's like I've heard this story so many times before, and I think you knew as well coming in as number 9 that she wouldn't take your advice. Have you had a chance to talk with her since the conviction, and is she rethinking her decision to ignore everybody who's smarter at this game than she is?
No, we haven't talked about that. You know, she's got a sentencing coming up December the 2nd, Monday, December the 2nd at 1:30. So we're going to deal with preparing her for that. She's going to speak at that. And then there's a
okay, answer the question. Sarah will be speaking at the pre-sentencing investigation, or pre-sentencing investigation. Sarah will be speaking at her sentencing.
pre-sentence investigation that the judge ordered. So we'll work on that. And the judge
What
has
do you
got
think she's going to get? What do you think the judge will sentence her to?
Well, you know, there's a range, and I think the state attorney had said the low end was 22 years, and of course, life is the top of the range, and the judge is going to have to make a decision. You know, as you know, there was testimony that she suffered from the battered spouse syndrome by our expert, and also the state attorney's expert testified. Both of them agreed that she suffered. So there is some mitigating factors, although the jury did not find that she was justified in the use of force that she used as a result.
Oh, you know what? Let's say, and I don't know shit, but this is just me just like kind of like thinking here. Let's say that she thought that she was going to get out right now, acquitted right now. Let's say Brian Boone owed her alimony. Let's say that money, that alimony kept accumulating for her. So like say Brian Boone has to pay her alimony every month and he puts it in a separate like checking deposit for Sarah Boone. That way, when she comes out, she would have 4.5 years worth of alimony, or I don't know if the child support thing really is a thing. Cause you know, obviously you're not taking care of the child and you're in jail, but maybe that was her thought. Maybe it was like, okay, I'm going to really fight for this fucking alimony because I'm going to get out at the end of this trial. And then when I come out, I'm going to have all this alimony money that's been waiting for me while I was incarcerated. Alimony required through next year, then it stopped to someone said 2025, right? So maybe that's why she was fighting so hard for it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if like you get alimony if you're incarcerated. Like that's kind of a weird thing to me. It's like, why should you get alimony? You have free housing, you have free food, you know? Like I said, maybe commissary shit, but I don't know. I don't know how the court's supposed to work with that. So maybe that's what she wanted. She was like, yeah, I wanted to come out and just have some, like, you know, a couple thousands of dollars. Oh. All right. So Dark Vader. Sarah's a nutcase, but why is everyone ignoring the fact that George was a nut job and an abuser as well? No one has ignored that. I think a lot of people went after George for, you know, the injuries that Sarah Boone had, like the stabbings and stuff, the black eye, you know, although some people are skeptical about whether or not it was George actually inflicted on it. But we've talked about George. We haven't said that like, oh, Sarah Boone was not the victim. A lot of people think that, you know, there was mutual abuse happening in the relationship. But I think with Sarah Boone, you know, George probably inflicted more damage on her. But it's hard to completely believe her as well, though, because Sarah Boone has a track record of lying. A lot of stuff that we would have to... A lot of stuff between her and George, we would have to just take Sarah's word for it. Or, you know, you look at the evidence, right? The recordings and stuff like that. But we still don't know the context. So, yes, Sarah Boone is being highly focused on this because it's her murder case, right? She's the one who killed George. But people still are like, yeah, George was the one who abused Sarah Boone. There are people who think that as well. So just because, you know, we're talking about Sarah Boone, it doesn't mean that, oh, we don't, you know, that like, oh, George is like automatically not the abuser. You think Sarah hit TV first before she records? I bet Brian doesn't owe any alimony anymore. Yeah, I'm very curious. If you guys find out what the outcome for the alimony stuff, let me know. I know it's a pending thing right now.
Result of the battered spouse syndrome, I think the judge can consider the fact that ultimately, you know, it was a dysfunctional toxic relationship in which both of them probably abused each other.
Thanks for watching.
What happened? Wait, what is this? What happened? He said they probably both abuse each other. It's possible that they both thrive in this very toxic relationship, although one was definitely way more aggressive and maybe in control than the other, in my opinion. Okay, I don't know what happened to Mr. Owens, man. They just cut him off like that. What happened? They said, bye, Mr. Owens. We're not going to let you finish. She was just getting to the interesting part. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know what happened. They said bye. They said peace out. They cut the interview when he started stating his opinion as fact. I still want to listen, though, because she can still push back. Okay, I don't know what happened. Maybe there's a longer segment out there, and I don't have access to it. Yes, I think this is the day of the verdict. Looks like it. It's nighttime. Reactive abuse? Yeah, then there are people that believe in that as well. I don't think Sarah thought there were anything wrong with the videos of her berating George. Exactly. Because usually when you're filming someone, you would think that, okay, well, I'm going to film, and this is going to be the person at their worst. But in those videos, it just made Sarah look really bad. And it's crazy to me that she didn't delete those videos. She kept them. I don't know if she kept them as a reminder of, oh, look at me humiliating George. Or maybe she used them and showed them to George or other people. Be like, hey, this is George. I humiliated him. It's so weird that she kept those videos. I don't know why she kept those videos. I don't even know why. Because let's say she captured videos of George coming at her, right? Hitting her and stuff like that. Okay, you would capture those videos for one, for evidence. And then for two, to be like, hey, here's a reminder of what you did to me in the past. Don't do this again or something like that, right? The fact that she kept the videos of like George just kind of just being berated, I don't know, was so weird to me. Super weird. I don't know, man. I don't know. Who has proof George was abusive? I've never seen any. So basically, it would be the pictures of Sarah Boone with all those injuries. But like I said, we're only getting Sarah Boone's version of it. But I don't know, man. When you have a black guy, when you got like a stab injury, it's like, ooh, this looks pretty fucking bad. But again, we don't get to know George's perspective of it. We don't get to see any of the, we didn't get to see like any of the medical records or anything like that. You know how like usually if you were dead and you were stabbed, they could be like, oh, well, let's look at the angle when it was stabbed. Like, does it look like it was like a self-stab thing, or does it look like someone actually stabbed you, right? So the only thing that we have for Sarah Boone is just her story and the injuries. And yeah, they look really fucking bad. They look really bad. But like I said, we don't know what happened. And it's hard to take Sarah's word for it because she's lied a lot. The text from George's employer seeing the black eye on George. Yep. I mean, even the siblings, even George's siblings was like, yeah, they both had bruisings. It wasn't just like the family members of George were like, oh yeah, it was only, you know, George that had bruises. Like they were like, yeah, they both had bruises on each other. You know, seems like, you know, things were going down between the two of them. All right, that was George at its worst. I wonder how much for injuries are from George trying to get her off him. Guess who's on this segment? We got Mr. Ben Chu. So I kind of want to listen to the end of the segment. I want to see what Mr. Ben Chu says. You know, we haven't heard from Ben Chu in a while. It's been a while, Mr. Ben Chu. Look forward to hearing from you. All right, Mr. Owens, let's see what he says. I don't know what's going to hurt her is, what's going to hurt her is her lack of remorse. Yeah, during sentencing. And I think Judge Kranig, you can't fool him. I don't think she's going to be able to fool Judge Kranig. You know, she can go up there, change her story, be like, you know what? Okay, fine. Like, I'm actually really sorry for what I done. And, you know, I sat through the trial, made me realize that I'm, you know, yeah, I fucked up. Yeah, I don't know. I think Judge Kranig is going to, she can try to manipulate, but I think he's going to look right through it. So that's why very interesting to see what she's going to say. Yes, Master Commander.
Hey there, Vinny. Yeah, it didn't take very long for the jurors to return a verdict in this case. Sarah Boone guilty of second-degree murder. We are joined now by her defense counsel, who advocated for her vehemently throughout this trial. This is James Owens. James, what's your reaction to the verdict?
Oh, man, poor Mr. Owens. Mr. Owens looked like he kind of tired. It's okay, Mr. Owens. You fought hard. You did your best with Sarah Boone.
Just disappointed. Sarah's devastated. She's disappointed. We felt like we had a good defense with the facts that we had. Obviously, we had some hurdles to overcome for the state's evidence. And
Some hurdles? Some hurdles? Some hurdles. Y'all had big hurdles.
for whatever reason, the jury didn't see it our way. We respect the jury's decision. I'm sure that Sarah Boone is going to want to appeal. I believe that she does have potentially 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So the next thing in store is I think we've got sentencing set for, I believe, Monday, December the 2nd at 1:30. And we intend to call Dr. Harper as a witness to speak about her other mental health issues that she struggles with.
Oh, and then also what I was surprised, I thought they were, I mean, if there is childhood trauma, I thought they were going to go into Sarah Boone's like childhood, you know, because usually it's like, okay, well, my client is the way that she is today because, you know, this is a childhood trauma. This is how she grew up. This is the family, you know, she was in a horribly abusive, blah, blah, blah. But maybe that wasn't her, right? Maybe that didn't apply to her. But I thought they were really going to go into more into Sarah Boone's history. I feel like they kind of just glazed over that. I really thought they would go into her history more. Same thing with actually when Amber Heard testified in the stand, when she was talking about her family and stuff like that. I really thought they were going to really go into deeply into her history with her dad, with her family and all that. But, you know, I'm surprised they didn't, because I feel like it's a good way to kind of try to get the jury to humanize someone who's accused of murder.
And hopefully the court will consider that.
Mr. Owens, Sarah Boone was offered a plea deal in this case, manslaughter. She did not take it. What do you think now, having the verdict?
Well, ultimately, that's their decision. You know, they've got a couple of fundamental decisions. One is whether to plead guilty to anything, and the other is whether to go to trial, and the other is, you know, whether to testify, and then the other is whether to appeal. And so Sarah Boone maintained that she wanted a trial the entire time, and we did discuss, there were plea negotiations, and there were offers on the table for the lesser charge of manslaughter, but Sarah ultimately rejected those offers and wanted her day in court.
She felt, it seemed, throughout this entire trial, she seemed to be very upbeat. It seemed...
And I wonder if, you know, because she was like, oh, the whole internet's watching, the whole World Wide Web, all eyes on me. I got fans out there. I wonder if she just wanted to go to trial also because she's egotistical. If she wanted to prove everyone wrong, everyone on the internet that had, you know, negative opinions about her, who's spoken out about her. I wonder if she just like, you know what? I'm going to go up there and testify and shut those motherfuckers up, you know? And she probably thought that she was going to do a really good job testifying on the stand. I wonder if that's one of the factors as well. Like, okay, well, I'm going to dump this. And they're going to be like, oh my God, poor Sarah Boone. Like, oh my gosh, like, how could we have said such mean things about Sarah Boone? We retract everything that we said. I don't know. Because I wonder if that's one of the things. Maybe.
Even though I was getting the sense she really felt she hadn't done anything criminally wrong.
Well, I think, you know, I believe she's a battered spouse. And I believe she believes she's a battered spouse. Once she learned, and we gave her a bunch of material about the subject, once she learned, you know, what she had gone through with George Torres, I think she believed she was a battered spouse. So we...
But does she think George was also a battered spouse? I don't know. I'm just curious. He's not going to answer that. But, you know, I just wondered, what about George? What about George? What about him?
Believed in that scenario that she was justified in defending herself.
No, not in that scenario. If it was during the stabbing incident, yeah, maybe she feels like she's justified to defend herself because she just got stabbed and maybe she thought that he was going to go after her, right? Per her story. Maybe when she had the black eye, when she had to defend herself, maybe. Again, you know, per her story, because we don't know what really went down. But the fact that she didn't have any injuries on her that day, suitcase, broken record, she was not justified anyway. I don't even know how could you even like mentally warp your mind into even thinking that you're even justified?
And so she felt good because she had a defense and she had lawyers. You know, initially she was going to represent herself, and then she did that for a while. And I think she appreciated the fact that we came in, myself, Tony Henderson, and Kevin Beck, and then our team. We had, you know, 5 or 6 people working on the case for the last 45 days trying to get ready for trial. And I think she appreciated our efforts. She knew we were working hard. I've been here in Orlando for 3 weeks. And then
also he mentioned that Sarah Boone thought she was a battered spouse when they showed her materials about battered spouse. So she looked at those materials and she's like, oh, actually, I am a battered spouse. I don't know, man. I feel like that was what she was already gunning for before before Mr. Owens and his defense team even got there. Because in my mind, I'm thinking she was probably pitching battered spouse with the other attorneys. And all the other attorneys were like, yeah, Sarah, I mean, you could qualify for battered spouse. However, in your scenario, it just wouldn't really justify the killing of George because of the circumstances. And I think that's why there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of fighting probably with her and the attorneys. And like I said, I'm making a lot of assumptions. Mr. Owens is making it seem like, oh, she didn't know anything about battered spouse. It wasn't until we showed her these books that she was like, oh yeah, I'm a battered spouse. I don't know, man. I think she already knew about the battered spouse thing, and she was already gunning for that. But her previous attorneys were probably like, yeah, Sarah, this is just going to be a yikes defense, man. Like, I don't know, Sarah. I think you should maybe take the plea deal. You know, maybe take the plea deal. It's hard to fit in battered spouse into what you did to George.
The rest of the team's been here for 2 weeks, so we've been doing everything we could do to represent her to the best of our ability, and that's what we did with the time that we had.
You really put up a good fight. Were you surprised that the jurors came back as quickly as they did?
I was.
Are you sure?
I think
You sure about that?
you know, the rebuttal evidence where they played a bunch of videotapes of off Sarah's phone where there were some interactions with Sarah and George, I think that affected the jury.
Yeah, I think it was very effective. Mm-hmm.
What do you think another big challenge was for you in this case?
Well, of course, the suitcase video is difficult to deal with. And then, you know, her interrogation, the 2-hour interrogation at the sheriff's department. So, I mean, you know, we have evidence. That's probably the best evidence in a case is videotape.
Yep, when you have video evidence. I feel like if I was a member of the jury, I would love video evidence, okay? Video speaks a million words. Karangal, thank you so much for the 25. The lawyers were circling, speeding up. The lawyers were circling Sarah while she stumbled into the legislative process. The weakness they were watching made the case very tempting. The weakness they were watching made the case very tempting. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Thank you so much for the 25. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Closing argument sucked as well. Yeah, I think in closing argument, I just feel like Mr. Owens was just like all over the place, unfortunately. It just wasn't very, I think his opening was pretty decent. I think he did a pretty decent job with opening. Closing was just, yeah, to me, it was just like all over the place, like kind of like sorting, like sifting through the papers. I think it was just like really unorganized. It probably would have helped if he split the closing arguments between him and someone else, maybe. That could have helped his workload by a lot. I have spoken. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it. The interviewers for Owens were a little annoying. Yeah, I know they want answers, but let them talk. LOL. Rain, tell me more about Owens. Hi. He is a real sexist, calling the women where the one is a lawyer and the paralegal are girls. And there are more things. I think Owens is, I don't know. When I hear stuff like that, I'm just like, he's just an old guy. He's just an old guy. You know, he hasn't kept up with the times. He's just an old guy. Because he kept saying, oh, the girls. And it's just like, they're women. But, you know, I think he's just an old guy.
Tape oftentimes is the best evidence. And, you know, we had some big hurdles to overcome.
It'd probably be annoying to work for him, though.
And obviously the jury, and I respect the jury's decision, saw it.
Thank you. See, they respect the jury's decision. I hate it when the defense attorneys, after getting a guilty verdict, they go out there gung-ho like, oh, the jury, you know, like, man, they didn't know what they were doing. You know, they didn't understand what their assignment was, you know, like just talking trash about the jury. I respect his response about the jury.
Big hurdles to overcome, and obviously the jury, and I respect the jury's decision, saw it a different way than we presented.
During your closing arguments, one of the things that you talked about was we're in 2024, and the perception that the state may be trying to give that she in a way deserved this, that she was the aggressor. You talked about how men are taught not to put a hand on a woman. I thought that was pretty powerful. I thought that was going to resonate a little bit more with the jury.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it was a long trial and the testimony came out. You know, the state got in a bunch of evidence about, like I said, the video interactions between George and Sarah. And some of that, it seemed like Sarah was berating him a little bit and talking down to him a
little bit, or a lot of bit, a little bit of a lot of bit. I don't think Sarah did a good job up on the stand. Owens is dreaming. Oh gosh, I read that incorrectly the first time. I thought it said, I think Sarah did a good job on the stand. Owens is dreamy. That's why I was going to read the comment. I was like, okay, we got a different opinion. It's because I read it wrong the first time. A little bit. He said a little bit. Just a little bit, just a little bit.
Seemed like Sarah was berating him a little bit and talking down to him a little bit. And, the state had argued that this was a mutual abusive situation, that Sarah verbally, emotionally maybe abused him. So I think there was some of that going on.
Physically?
In the relationship. It was a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. Obviously, those two didn't need to be together. But they, for whatever reason, they could not stay away from each other. And even when she had been battered multiple times by him over time, for whatever reason, they couldn't break up. And I think everybody around, law enforcement, the neighbors, family, all knew how bad the situation was, but for whatever reason, they were drawn to each other and couldn't let go.
The judge made it clear before the verdict was read that he did not want any outbursts in the courtroom. We had one earlier from George Torres's family. No real reaction from Sarah Boone. I just saw her talking with you, but obviously, as you were mentioning, seems to be not very happy, devastated with the verdict.
Yeah, she couldn't believe it. We were optimistic. We were optimistic, and I understand, these things happen, and there's some murder charge. So, somebody died. So it's difficult for a jury sometimes not to come back with something. And
Corky, do you think Sarah will get a good deal from the judge in sentencing? A good deal would be like what, the minimum 22 years? No, I don't think he'll give her 22 years. I think maybe 22 years if she had showed that she was sorry for what she did, regret, sadness. We haven't seen that from Sarah Boone. I think, I don't know if he'll give her, I mean, someone said in the chat, basically getting 40 years, 50 years is like pretty much life, right? Yeah, I feel like she's not going to get out until she's maybe 70s if she gets out. I don't know. I think he'll give her like 30 something years, maybe. I'm thinking like maybe 35 years. Maybe 35 years. I'm just pulling out of my ass, but maybe 35 years.
they came back with the highest charge. I was hoping maybe for something lesser, but we understand. Sarah's in shock. It happened, and then she was escorted out of the court fairly quickly, so we really didn't get a chance to talk that much. She said she would call me tomorrow. I'm going to be driving back home, and we'll talk. I'll be on the road for 6 hours, so we'll talk for however long.
Max, life in prison. Yeah, because again, the way that he died it was a horrible, horrible death. I'm assuming it was a slow death because he didn't die of bleeding, right? And he didn't die of like the baseball injuries per the what's the name of the person again? Not the medical examiner. I forgot. Forensic examiner. Forensic person. But I don't know. I'm assuming that it was just a very slow death. Ooh, Lawyer has a video scheduled for a few minutes from now about a new evidence in the Delphi case, opening doors for the defense. Ooh.
But I explained to her she had a right to an appeal, and she had 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So I told her to keep her head up.
Mr. Owens, you were not her first attorney. She went through several attorneys. How was she to work with?
Owen says she had a couple of things that she could appeal. Remember, he was asking for a mistrial. What was the mistrial again? He was accusing the state of discovery issues regarding. Oh, yes. The psychiatrist's testimony. Apparently, it had changed from what Owens found out in deposition versus what she was testifying. That was one. Owens asked for a mistrial when there was a family outburst during the video and how the family and the detective were sitting really close to each other. When else did Owens ask for a mistrial?
She was fine. I think once she realized, it wasn't just me, and I spent a lot of time down here with her. And then once she realized Tony Henderson really helped me out a lot with Sarah Boone. And, I've represented some difficult clients. I've been doing it quite a while. But Sarah, was, of course, she didn't want to give up the power because she'd had the case for 4.5 years. She had so many different lawyers. But I think once she started to trust us and realized that we really cared about her, we really believed in her, and we wanted to do everything we could to fight for her, I think she finally, I say finally, it didn't take too long for her to develop a sense that we were really genuinely trying to help her. And I think once she saw how hard we were working and everything we were trying to do to help her, we didn't have a problem.
And you got involved with this case because you saw that she had taken out an ad.
Yeah, as you know, the court had ruled that she forfeited her right to a lawyer, a public lawyer. And so she was going to have.
Inmate seeks attorney looking for a prosperous challenge, ready for your up close on national television. Are you zealous with a side of keen? Show the world who you are with your original creativity, extraordinary expertise, confident ingenuity. Remember, Sarah Boone is a straight A art student. Look at the artwork. Qualifications must include being trustworthy, honest, passion-driven, open-minded, exceptional problem-solving skills, client inclusion at all times, learn orientation, collaboration, extremely efficiency in listening, communicating, understanding, dedication to success, possessing a winning mindset, capable of excellence in representation, committed, maintaining faith in the client and case with that ability to think differently, overcome all circumstances. Join the team now.
Have to represent herself, and I think she went to a couple of hearings and realized that that's a lot harder than it looks.
Yep. Epic opportunity awaits.
And that's when she had reached out for somebody in the private bar to take the case, and I came down and visited with her, and I agreed to do it. So we were in it to win it. We tried everything we could do to present the case in a fashion that the jury would consider her side.
I think one of the biggest moments was when you got the expert of the states to talk about the fact that she did believe that Sarah Boone suffered from battered spouse syndrome. I thought that was going to be a big game changer for you.
Well, it was. You know, I've got some disagreements about how that was all handled because she came out with an opinion that she had never expressed before.
And then you had to conduct a deposition right there in court.
Yeah, I've never had to do that. That was a first, but it was a unique situation. Of course, you know, the judge had set a date certain about trying the case, so I had the case for about 45 days, but we tried to schedule Dr. Werner's deposition. I believe we took it on October the 4th, and then later on, she came out with another opinion that I wasn't aware of until in the courtroom, and so the judge allowed me to take a deposition. I've never heard of it happening before. First time it ever happened, but it did, and
I think that's why he was really unprepared to do it, because when he was taking the deposition, he was going hard at it with the expert on the stand. And the judge was like, okay, Mr. Owens, like, this is your chance. Take the deposition. Don't you want to ask her anything about the battered spouse and what she thinks about other stuff? And Owens like, oh, okay, yeah. So I don't know. I feel like Judge Kranick is, he truly is someone who has the aura of like a professor. You know, like when there are like seasoned attorneys, if they mess up on something, I feel like he's there to like teach them and school them a little bit.
You know, we did the best that we could to counter that and then to cross-examine her. But yeah, I think initially she had said she hadn't made up her mind about it, but I think after a little bit of time, she decided to go ahead and give the opinion that Sarah did suffer from battered spouse, and that corroborated what Dr. Harper had said, that she did suffer from battered spouse syndrome. So I guess that was a good of that.
Any thought in hindsight that maybe there was a motion to eliminate for you not to use the battered spouse syndrome defense, to not talk about self-defense? Obviously, you got to be able to do that. The state was very clear. She needs to say there's an overt act. She eventually did. She said his hand coming out of the suitcase was that overt act. In hindsight, could there have been another strategy that you could have taken that could have been more successful, maybe not argue battered spouse syndrome?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, what she was saying in that 2-minute video to George while he was in the suitcase, I'm convinced was tied to the trauma that she had received from the abuse that she had suffered from George. And I I just think Dr. Harper, you know, it's a complex syndrome. It really is, and it's difficult for lay people to understand. I've tried to talk to, you know, the psychologist, the psychiatrist about it to try to understand it. You know, why somebody wouldn't leave that situation. Why, you know, if they're getting beaten up, they're getting stabbed in the leg, why wouldn't you leave that situation? It's one of those things, it's a head scratcher for a lot of people. And so that's the reason you bring in expert testimony, is to try to explain that to a jury what was going on. But it's difficult for people to really understand.
When Sarah Boone refused the plea offer, the judge made it very clear to her that the minimum he could sentence her to would be 22 years in prison. Is she prepared for the sentencing? It's going to be in December.
I don't think she's prepared. I don't believe that. You know, I think she was in hopes, you know, she was excited about us, and she felt like she had a defense.
She
And
probably thought, like I said, Thanksgiving, December, she was going to be spending time with her family.
that we were doing everything, and she had the
son.
experts lined up. So I don't think she was thinking about this at all. I think she was very optimistic. That's why she was optimistic during the trial.
Yes,
She was happy with us every day. She was happy with what we were doing. And, of course, you know, she understood that it was a valid defense in Florida, battered spouse using it to justify the force that you use. So, yeah, she's devastated, and she hadn't come to grips. Like I say, I'll talk to her tomorrow, but she was just stunned today.
Vinny also has a question. Vinny, what's the question?
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Oh, look at Ben Chu. Hello, Mr. Chu. How you doing over there?
For James. First, at the sentencing, will this judge have much discretion in what the sentence can be? And do you expect Sarah to express any sense of remorse?
Oh, thank you, Vinny. Oh, my God. Vinny's always reading my mind. Thank you, Vinny. That's why we love Vinny. Vinny over there.
At sentencing.
At the sentencing, will the judge, Vinny's asking, at the sentencing, will the judge have any discretion? This is her first felony. The judge made that very clear. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, will Sarah Boone say something? Will she express any sort of remorse for what took place? Will she make a statement in allocution at her sentencing? I know we...
Oh, you see that big, deep breath in? Mr. Owen's like, okay. Yoga breaths, yoga breaths. Can I cover the Jodi Arias trial? So the Jodi Arias trial is so extensive. I started to. Her direct examination was like 3 weeks long. She was testifying for 3 fucking weeks long. And then her cross-examination was, how many days was it? Like 5-10 days or something like that. It was pretty damn long. So I think we do have a Jodi Arias playlist. Yeah, we do have a Jodi Arias playlist that we watch. We watched the cross-examination with her, Juan Martinez, but it was just a very, very, very long trial. Was it 18 days? Oh gosh. Yes, Vinny is good. Always straight to the point. Yeah, Vinny's always asking what we thinking. Nobody accepted the overt act. Yeah, because it sounds ridiculous. Man was trying to get out of the suitcase, all right? Both trials way too long. Like, if we were watching it live together as it was happening, yeah, you know, I'd be down. But oh my God, yeah, I don't know. We watched the cross-examination. It was very, very spicy. So definitely check out the Jodi Arias playlist. And I think, I'm trying to think, because I think did we look into like the evidence and all that stuff too? I think we did. Yeah, Jodi Arias, a crazy one.
Any sort of remorse for what took place? Will she make a statement in allocution at her sentencing? I know you have to take some preparation time for that.
Ooh, that's another deep breath in.
I think the prosecutor had said the low end of the guidelines was 22 years, and I think the judge told Sarah that. So I think that probably is the minimum, unless there's something I'm missing, maybe a downward departure. I don't know that she would qualify, but you know, the judge has a range, and the judge has the discretion, and the judge, you know, is going to hear from the victim's family, and then the judge is going to hear from Dr. Harper, and ultimately the judge is going to have to hear from Sarah Boone about this. I don't know what her position is going to be.
That seems like a no to me. Do I think my client Sarah Boone is going to show any source of remorse, any ounce of remorse whatsoever? Yeah. Sounds like a no to me.
But we'll see.
Mr. Owens, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice work.
All right, thanks. Appreciate
All right, good job.
Vinny, that's the latest. We'll send it back to
Okay.
you.
Kelly Craft at the courthouse with Sarah.
Okay, so I want to listen to Ben Chu. I think he speaks about twice. Listen to Ben Chu. Actually, how long is this? It's not long.
Boone's attorney. We got all our guests here. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more of our coverage. It's a
Yes.
take us to Sarah Boone, right? She just found out like less than an hour ago that she could potentially be in prison for the rest of her life. She's not going home tonight. The jury did not believe her. What is tonight going to be like for Sarah Boone?
Yeah, do you think she's going to cry in her cell privately? So when the verdict was being read out, I thought she was about to cry and then she held it in. But then when we watched it again, I was like, oh, I think she was just moving her lips. I thought, I don't know. I thought she was going to cry. But when I rewatched it again, I was like, oh, actually, no, I don't think she was about to cry. I think it was something else. Huh.
Well, I think she's probably in a state of shock, Vinny, and she's probably wishing that she took that plea about now. Mm-hmm. I don't think the jury found her argument to be very sympathetic. She basically heard him beg for his life, and she turned her back on him and was taunting him. So the battered woman defense just didn't fly with the jury.
And what are your thoughts tonight also? Because immediately after we saw a shot of George's family inside the courtroom. They left the courthouse. They didn't want to give a statement tonight, but they'll have an opportunity at sentencing to speak. What are your thoughts tonight about what it means for this family that George is never coming back, but the person that they believe was responsible was in fact held responsible here?
Well, I'm sure they find some sense of relief that he was held responsible. But listen, there are no winners here. There are only losers. Everyone loses in this case, and it's just a tragedy, however you slice it.
Let me ask you, Ben Chu, do you think Sarah Boone will demonstrate any sense of remorse at her sentencing?
I think we can all agree that Vinny's our true crime daddy. But who will be our mama? For me, it would be Anna Garcia. I don't know, man. You guys, what was her name? Shit, her name fucking escapes me. She's on Law and Crime. Not Jessie. She's on Law and Crime. What's her name again? Lisette? Oh my gosh, how could I forget her name? What's her name? Oh, guys, help me out here. She's on Law and Crime. Law and Crime. Anjanette. Okay. Did y'all see how Anjanette chased down Carrie Morrissey after the Alec Baldwin shit? She chased her down so fast. She was like, you could hear her like losing breath, and she was like trying to catch her breath, and she was like trying to interview. I would not say Anjanette. Okay, Anjanette was like chasing down after her. Yeah, Anjanette Levy. I was like, you go, Anjanette, you go. You know, Anjanette, you might have to do a little more cardio, but yeah, she was like chasing down Carrie Morrissey, trying to get her words in before she was running out of breath. So I like Anjanette. I like Anjanette Levy. Nancy Grace. You know, I haven't really listened to Nancy Grace. But Nancy Grace is like the like she's always done true crime stuff, right, for a very long time. Like I've always heard of Nancy Grace growing up, but I never really watched Nancy Grace. When is her sentencing? December 2nd, I believe. December 2nd?
When the rest of her life is in the hands of the judge?
I don't. I think she's been quite consistent, and I think suddenly pleading contrition would seem to be out of character for her.
Mm-hmm.
Paulette?
But wouldn't it be good, though, to be like, okay, you know what, Judge? I had like a month to reflect about everything. You know, I'm glad that I didn't take the plea deal, because you know what? I do think that I deserve to serve a minimum 22 years. You know, maybe she could do something like that. Like, oh, I've had time to think about it. And Judge, you know, like, fuck. Like, this was a huge reality check for me. You know, going through the trial again, seeing the video again, going through all the evidence, and then getting a reminder of how mean I was to him in the video. You know, maybe she could say something like that. You know, maybe. Or it could just be like, Sarah, you're manipulating us. You know, that's not true. You don't believe that.
Do you think she turns on James Owens, the man who volunteered his time, flew in from Pensacola, was watching this show and saw that there was someone facing murder charges who didn't have a lawyer? Do you think that she turns on him?
I really hope not.
Oh, no, please don't turn on Mr. Owens. Oh, no, you think she's going to be like, oh, Mr. Owens, you know, ineffective counsel. Oh, I hope not. That'd be so mean.
love Mr. Owens' passion. I think he said it correctly. You know, everyone has a right to a trial, and sometimes you just have to try a case.
I know you hope she doesn't, but will she?
I don't think she will. I think Mr. Owens did as well as he possibly could. He did what she wanted him to do. He presented all of the defenses that she had been trying to make on her own. So I don't think that she's going to turn on him. I don't think so.
Bernarda, what do you think happens at the sentencing? How do you think it plays? What is she going to do? And what will prosecutors do here?
Well, you know what the prosecutors are going to do. Remember, that's when the victims that are impacted by the death of their loved one are going to be able to speak, and speak where there is no objection, where they're going to show their true emotions, where they don't have to suppress their emotions like they had to do during the trial inside of that courtroom, doing closing arguments or doing the testimony. So that sentencing is going to be very emotional. It's actually one of the most emotional stages of any criminal case, because it's the moment where you hear from the family members and they're expressing so much emotion about the loss of their loved one and how much they hate and resentment that they have towards the defendant for taking.
From all the trials that you guys have seen, from all the trials in sentencing, which defendant was the most convincing in their, I guess, in their statement to the judge? Like, hey, judge, I'm sorry for what I did. I regret it. Blah, 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 blah. Who do you think sounded the most convincing? I mean, there were some that were just like, oh, I didn't do it, judge. I didn't do it. But I meant like in terms of like feeling remorseful, feeling sad for the crime. Who do you think sounded very convincing? Amber's not even in, okay? She was no murder for Amber Heard. Shonda. Oh, Shonda's child, the teenage son. Okay. Yeah, that one's a really sad one. None were convincing. I think Owens asked the judge to ask her daily if she was happy with her defense. Yep, I'm glad that the judge did that. I'm glad. Do you think, hi girl, how are you doing today? Do you think the other video that Sarah took on George, who they play in court, that she was going to play as evidence, or what was that big surprise for her? Was it a big surprise for her? I mean, she knows what videos are on her phone. So like, you think maybe like she thought that they were going to play those videos in court? I think she would have to have known. Yes, Rain, I agree with you. That was the first one that came into my mind. Mr. Mew looked genuinely defeated. I know there are people that don't believe Mr. Mew should have got a guilty verdict, but Mr. Mew, I agree. He looked like he was like defeated. I mean, he is like in his like 50s. Mr. Mew, Shonda Vander Ark's teenage son, or he's probably not a teenager anymore, right? Ruby Frankie. Ruby. What did I think of Ruby? Ruby Frankie. Jody, I know. We were like, fuck no. Ruby. I think Ruby just knows what people want from her. I think Ruby is a people pleaser. But you know what? Maybe that gives him a chance to change, because she's like, okay, these are the expectations that people have of me now, and I want to live up to their expectations. But Ruby, I don't know. Ruby, I don't know. I don't know if she was just doing it because she thinks that's what people wanted to hear. Lori was convincingly mentally ill. Ruby Frankie. Sarah didn't show an ounce of remorse. Amber showed regret. Her act didn't work, though. No remorse. OJ, I didn't listen to the OJ one. Ruby's a good actor. Yeah, because I feel like Ruby was just people pleasing. But I do want Ruby to change, though, because she has a lot of children in her life. And, you know, let's say she gets out. We don't know when she gets out. Like, let's say she gets out, like, I don't know, 4 years, 8 years, 15 years. We want her to change because, you know, we want her to have a, you know, it'd be good for her children if she changed. But I wouldn't be surprised if her children wanted to cut her out. You hated Mr. Mew's verdict. She thought she was coming home. That evidence come late. Oh, hello. Who was that? Sea Breeze? Sea Breeze, thank you so much. What kind of doggo is that in your profile picture? Sea Breeze, thank you so much for joining the membership. Enjoy your baby corgi badge. It's going to be right next to your name. So you know, pop up in the channel And then enjoy your emotes. We got some emotes on here, which I think I'm going to change. I just don't know how to do it on YouTube. I got to figure that out. Hi, Joe. How are you doing today? Hello, hello. How are we doing this Wednesday? Doing good. Doing good. Doing good. Who are you guys talking about? Leilani. Rip. Quentin Simon. Oh, Leilani. When is her sentencing? I totally agree with you. She's a evil, vile, cruel, evil monster. I really struggle with Muse too. The whole situation sucked. Her kids hate Ruby. No way they want her back. I don't know, Maureen. I think I heard that the family were pushing the kids to forgive their mom. Yikes. I feel like I remember hearing about that. I don't know, which I think is, I don't know. I think it's shitty. I think it's really shitty. I think let the kids decide what they want to do with mom. You don't need to try to convince them to have a good relationship with mom, but I feel like I remember that from somewhere. Maybe it was through the letters that they wrote to the judge or something that that Ruby's family, like brother, mom, dad, wrote to the family. Ruby doesn't deserve those kids. Ruby was so fake and just saying that she thought was expected. She showed very little sympathy to the kids, but you know, I don't know. It seems I think her ex-husband Kevin Frankie, I think he ate it up. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Frankie was still kind of hoping that his wife would change. I don't know. I feel I never really knew Leilani. All she did was blame Jody. She was abusing her kids the way before Jody showed up. She's sick in the head. Jody just elevated it. Yeah, she basically found her partner in crime that was going to co-sign all the bad actions that she was going to, do to those kids. It's crazy. Thank you, Corgi. You've been hanging out here since the Sarah craziness. Wolf is my totem. I'm talking and live in... Oh, Wolf is my totem. I am talking and I live in Southeast Alaska. Oh, Alaska. I hear sometimes the days and the nights in Alaska can be a little bit crazy. Her facial expression when she saw the suitcase, she's not sorry. Ruby was lending her kids out to other people as slaves, for fuck's sake. Yeah, I don't know. Ruby's like, I think she's up there for a manipulator. I don't know. She's like a master manipulator. But then she's also, to me, probably feels like the type of person who's easily manipulated as well. Because she was very, she was a people pleaser. We thought Ruby seemed really calculated in her statement. Yeah, I don't know. The fact that she threw Jody under the bus, I wonder if Jody was like, fuck, I thought she was going to be committed to me. Yeah, the fact that everything was blamed on Jody. It's like, ma'am, you're the mother. You allowed this woman to do these things to your kids. And it wasn't just her doing it. It wasn't like you were just standing around. It's like you were also participating in the abuse as well. I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, where are we listening to? Where are we at? Mr. Benchu?
About the loss of their loved one and how much they hate and resentment that they have towards the defendant for taking the life away from that loved one. The question will be is whether Sarah Boone will be able to control herself, whether she'll be able to constrain herself and not responding to this family and not looking at them and not even going off on them and trying to blame them for what actually happened. So who knows what's going to happen into this courtroom, but we do know it's going to be an emotionally charged day.
Philip Dubé, my guess is this is going to be one of those inmates who will be filing papers till the end of time.
I wanted to talk about Lori before we ended stream. I wanted to talk about Lori, and since we're already talking about Delphi, I mean, I want to read the recap, but I was like, oh, you guys are here. I'll read the recap with you guys.
Till the end of time. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I've had clients like that. They commit what we call lawfare or the crime of barratry. It's actually on the books out here. It's just filing frivolous civil lawsuits, and they've actually criminalized it. In the civil world, they call it the vexatious litigant. But if it crosses that line where there's...
The vexatious litigant, V-E-X-acious, A-C-I-O-U-S? What does he say? He said 3 words that I'm just like, what is this word?
It's oh, I've had clients like that. They commit what we call lawfare or the crime of barratry. It's actually...
Lawfare or the crime of barratry.
On the books out here, it's just filing frivolous civil lawsuits, and they've actually criminalized it. In the civil world, they call it the vexatious litigant. But if it crosses that line where there's this intent to really vex.
Vex? I thought vex is just when you're annoyed of something. Oh, I guess a vexatious could be like an annoying, okay, like a nuisance. Gotcha. V for vendetta.
and annoy, it's criminalized where they can file criminal charges against you. I think a lot of it is going to depend on her diagnosis. We're going to hear at sentencing what her mental illness might be. My hunch is that it is a personality disorder, and those are the hardest to treat because there's no known medicinal treatment for it. It's typically dealt with through behavioral therapy, where you have to sit down in a one-on-one with a therapist wagging their finger at you, teaching.
I mean, Dr. Julie Harper says that she definitely suffers from PTSD. She's a battered spouse, and she's got depression. This was during the time of the murder, I think. Depressive disorder, right? I think that's what she said. And she has narcissistic traits, but I don't think he ever mentioned anything else about like having other personality disorders or anything.
You how to put your bad behavior in a box. But truthfully, the older you get, the harder it is to unlearn bad behavior. So I don't know that she will ever change. She is a type of person that will only get older, I think. And I hope for Mr. Owen's sake that nothing happens. And let's be honest, even if she does file, nothing will happen to him. You want to go to the state bar, go to the bar. He can probably even give her a stamp, help her fill out the forms. The bar is going to...
Owen's not helping her. Owen's is like, bye. I'm going to help you with your sentencing and then peace out. Yeah, usually when I hear vex in a sentence, it's like vexed, like, oh, I'm vexed by this person. Never heard of vexatious before. Vexatious.
Close it out. Nothing's going to happen to the man. He was quite prepared, and he did a great job.
Yeah, all they have to do is take a look at the video of the trial. I mean, and the passion that he brought and why he was there. Yeah, but I fear for him.
Passion, yes. Preparedness. It was probably really hard because, you know, again, he thought that there was going to be a continuation. But he did the best he can under the circumstances.
I fear for him because, you know, he'll be potentially in her crosshairs at some point. All right, guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to try to wrap this up and put some sense of context on it.
She ain't no battered spouse. George was abused, controlled, and battered. So Dr. Julie Harper said that she was a battered spouse, and then also the state's experts said that she was a battered spouse. However, when the state talked about Sarah being a battered spouse, she qualified by saying that, well, I mean, we had to go off her statements. So, I mean, again, they get to look at the medical records. They get to look at, you know, the photos of the injuries, but they had to go off her statements, how to her, or her version of stories of her relation between her and George. So it's a lot of like self-reporting happening. And of course, they can look at other things as a whole as well. But with that one, it's hard because you're not like a fly on the wall during the times when George and Sarah were fighting, right? You have very limited information, and then you only have one person who's alive to fill in the gaps. So when the state was like, yeah, she's a battered spouse, you know, and she qualified it by saying, like, oh, you know, based off what Sarah self-reported.
But the headline is huge tonight. Sarah Boone, guilty of the top charge of second-degree murder in the suitcase murder trial.
I think Benchu comes back one more time. Mr. Benchu. I feel like I saw Mr. Benchu. Benchu. Let's see.
How do you see the dynamic between these two? Because they, you know, we heard one story about.
What do you mean? She looks like, hold on, someone made a comment about her. She looks like Cher. Cher, right? Cher. Am I thinking of the right rock star? Yeah, Cher. Long, black hair. Very celebrity-like.
The domestic abuse, the spousal syndrome, all of that. On the other hand, we saw and heard the video. We see that video. It seems like every time a videotape is recording, Sarah Boone's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
It really shows the toxicity and the dysfunctionality within the relationship. And it really casts her in a very negative light. And not only shows you what she's capable of, but shows you who she
Oh my God, this background. What is this background? This is like GTA or something? I don't know, it hurts my eyes. There's too many bright lights.
she is as a person, and she really comes across as a less than sympathetic figure.
You know, Bernarda, what if, like from the beginning of this story, and we covered it from the beginning, she had come outside, and when
Morticia's very sexy.
She spoke to 911, she spoke to the first officer, had just said, we were drinking, I was drunk, I was out of my mind, I was taunting him, and then I passed out. And I wish that I didn't pass out. I can't believe I killed him. What do you think if she had said that from the beginning, acknowledged it, showed some level of remorse, how do you think this whole thing would have been handled?
If Sarah Boone had said from the very beginning, when the cops responded, that she was passed out, she was drinking, this was an accident, you know what would have happened, Vinny? Having been a prosecutor for 16 years, she would not have been charged with murder. More than likely, she would have been charged with manslaughter, but she wouldn't have been charged with that high count of murder. So the charging decisions would have been different.
Paulette Lofton, let me ask you, how different would this trial have been without the video?
I don't know though. Manslaughter though, but even with the injuries, the issue was the injuries that he had from the baseball bat. If George had just went in the suitcase and he just suffocated and there were no injuries from the baseball bat, okay, like maybe it's like we were playing hide and go seek. He hid in the suitcase. I was so drunk, I forgot about him. Sure, maybe you can convince some people with that. But he had these fucking injuries. And that's why in the interrogation, when the law enforcement was asking her, okay, so where did these bruises come from? Where did the ball in his head come from? Where did this come from? She's like, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. Things were good between the two of us. It's like, okay, well, was there anyone else in the apartment with you? No. I don't know. Maybe Sarah Boone should have done the Jodi Arias thing. Oh, man, there was like these two people that were trying to like home invade us. And like they had to put George in the suitcase because George was like the major threat. And I was just a woman. And, you know, they came in, they messed the house around, they robbed us and they left. And I passed out because I was so drunk. I don't know. But I don't know. I think it was really hard to explain away those injuries that he had.
Oh, I think it would have been completely different. Without the videos, without her interrogation, I agree. I think she definitely could have walked, or it could have been manslaughter. I think that video and the fact that she tried to say...
What about the bruises? I don't know, man. Manslaughter with the bruises?
Say that there was this whole other section of time where there wasn't a video. I think that really did a number on her chances.
Philip Dubé, are you feeling philosophical tonight? Is there any lesson? These tragedies that we cover, I try to glean something from them. Is there any sort of a lesson or something we can take away from all this?
Think tank, number one, don't talk to the cops. They want to take you down to the station and talk to you. Don't say a word.
I wasn't asking.
No, talk to them. Okay, self-snitch. Make it easier for us.
For advice for criminal defendants, Philip Dubé.
Why not? Please, come on now. No. First of all, I'm a firm believer in taking early responsibility. Had she early on really tried to resolve the case, you never know. Maybe they could have resolved it for like an involuntary manslaughter, the culpable negligence theory, rather than it being an intentional reckless disregard type homicide theory. She's not going to walk away from this. I truly believe that had she have even come clean at the gate with the cops, they still would have hooked her up and hauled her in. She's just not going to walk away. The only question is what degree of homicide they would file on her. But the more cooperative she is, the less chatty she is, the less video she has, the less evidence they have. So I think the lesson...
Look at her trying to explain, oh, look, I left enough room for him to come out the zipper. Oh, my God, Sarah. So...
here is A, don't record your crimes, don't memorialize your crimes, and shut your pie hole if the cops want to come talk to you.
Okay, we've got folks who can bleep all of that out, because if there's any criminal defendants listening now, we don't need to help them along the way here, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinny. I'm like, no, tell them to confess. It makes it easier for us. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're accused of a crime, don't be doing these things. But, there are some people out there that do, and it makes it easier. All right, it makes it easier.
Let me ask you, Ben Chu, what are you going to take away? Like, a year from now, when you think back about this case, what's the image that's going to come into your mind, and what do you think is going to stick with the public when it comes to Sarah Boone and the suitcase murder trial?
I think the prosecutor's description of the suitcase as a coffin. I mean, that.
Okay, I'm being nosy. I just want to know, what is all that stuff back there? I see the Beatles. Like, this is so interesting. There's so much cool shit back there. Like, what does he have back there? I wish I could zoom in and enhance. I think lots of Beatles stuff back there, right? Seems to be a huge fan of the Beatles. Is there like some music stuff over here? Lots of music stuff going on here. I want to know what's behind that. Can we do a little room tour, Ben? Ben, can we do a room tour? Turn around.
There's description of the suitcase as a coffin. I mean, that is something that is fixed in my mind, and then juxtaposed with the baseball bat. And the combination is ineffable cruelty.
Dr. Bober, let me ask you, what do you think was the underlying cause of what happened here? Is it the alcohol? Is it a sense of evil? How did we end up where we ended up here with George Torres dead?
I think it was the perfect storm. I think it was the rage over the relationship, over feeling abused, combined with the alcohol, and taken all together, it had lethal consequences. So I think it was a combination of factors.
And let me ask you this. Is there any way for folks who are...
Oh, and when Mr. J took that baseball bat and was like, yeah, the bruises on George's back, his back would have been here. Boom, boom, boom. Do you guys notice it's hard right here? Huh. Well, you guys don't have to believe that George got these injuries inside of a suitcase. He could have been outside. you don't have to take her word for it. It's like, oh man, good job, Mr. J. Good job. Mr. J doing so good. He's doing so good in closing argument.
We're in a relationship like that, to resolve that relationship without breaking up the relationship.
You know, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe it was like something like skin surgery. Kara, she had surgery for skin cancer is what I heard. Like if she had like a skin growth or something like that was like cancerous and they had to remove it. I was thinking maybe it was like something like that.
Or is if you're in a toxic situation, is the only way to safety just to walk away from one another?
Well, it's beyond the scope of this program, but what I would tell people who are going through these types of relationships is that you have to try to get therapy, get counseling. But if you need to extricate yourself from the relationship, it's very important to have a safety plan to get yourself out of the relationship. And that includes covering all your financial needs, your emotional needs, where you're going to reside. And you really have to come up with a plan and execute that plan with your support system. That's the only way out.
Big thank you to all our guests working late on a Friday night for this verdict night. Bernardo Villalona, Ben Chu, Dr. Daniel Bober.
Okay. All right. Well, we got to hear from them. Jesus. I think Sarah stayed with George until he died. I don't believe he died alone. Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't believe that she went upstairs and fell asleep on the bed. I think she sat there falling asleep to him crying out to her. I do. I don't know. But, you know, that's just a me thing. It's just a me thing. It was a good closing. Yeah, he did a really good job in closing arguments.